It was one of TV's most watched events. Jane Torville and Christopher Dean's record-breaking performance at the 1984 Winter Olympics. It made an icon of Boléro, the seductive piece to which they danced. It gave its name to a Boléro square in the couple's hometown of Nottingham, England. And seductive movement is exactly what Ida Rubinstein contemplated back in 1928. You see, Madame Rubinstein's an impresario. She's looking to commission a ballet for her dance company. She's got the name, Fandango. She's got the story, a gypsy woman doing a steamy table dance beneath the gloomy lamps of a Spanish tavern. And she knows precisely what music she wants, a set of piano pieces called Iberia, but arranged for orchestra. Yet Iberia's Spanish composer, Isaac Albéniz, is long dead, so Madame Rubinstein approaches 58-year-old Maurice Ravel to do the orchestration. You see, Ravel's just as brilliant an orchestrator as he is a composer, and though he's French, he's nuts for all things Spanish. In fact, he was born near the Spanish border to a mother from the Basque region. So just like that, France's greatest living composer starts orchestrating Fandango. But there's a catch. Enrique Fernández Arbós. Heard of him? Well, neither had they. Turns out this randomer owned the rights to orchestrate Albéniz's piece. My whole summer's ruined. Orchestrating Iberia was going to be such fun. Lawyers are idiotic. What am I going to tell Ida? She'll be furious. A downhearted Ravel shelves Fandango. Just another disappointing, unfinished composition. And Ravel had plenty of them, for his lifelong perfectionism meant he rarely ever managed to complete his own works. And it wasn't only in music that Ravel was a slave to perfection. He was scrupulous about his dandy appearance, snobbish for the finest wines, a man who ran his life with machine-like precision, obsessed with mechanical clocks and music boxes. In fact, his father was an engineer, an inventor of an internal combustion engine, and nothing excited young Ravel more than exploring Dad's factory. So you get the picture. Ravel's an aloof creature of exacting habit. So that meant nothing, absolutely nothing, would get in the way of his early morning routine, a vigorous swim followed by a sumptuous breakfast. That is until one day on vacation in Saint-Jean-de-Luz. That morning, Ravel, as usual, put on his yellow dressing gown and scarlet bathing cap, and he made his way down to the swimming pool. But then he veered off script. He detoured to the piano, and, living a little dangerously, tapped out on a single finger a melody so simple, yet so insistent he couldn't get it out his head. And that would be the melody for Madame Rubinstein's ballet. It wouldn't be called Fandango, but Boléro. And whereas Fandango was about the gypsy romance of the Spanish tavern, Ravel's Boléro would be about the modern age of mass production. A dance of jealous lovers against the backdrop of a great industrial factory. A reflection of his passion for mechanics and clockwork precision. Boléro pitted that earworm melody against the relentless beat of a snare drum, looping the same rhythm 169 times. The snare drum like a conveyor belt, carrying that melody from instrument to instrument. One great machine construction. A factory ballet, like those then in vogue with Prokofiev and Shostakovich. The piece starts very quietly, a single flute playing that melody over the snare drum, simple and plain. The melodies pass to the clarinet, a slight crescendo, and then to a third instrument, the bassoon. And after each instrument plays that sinuous theme, each joins the accompaniment for the next. And next up is an E-flat clarinet. You see, This piece isn't really about melody, harmony or rhythm. They're unchanging. It's about the texture of sound, what we call timbre, the dazzling and colourful range of sound waves generated by different instruments. Just listen to the next one, the oboe d'amour. It's a distant cousin of the more familiar instruments we've already heard, but has an ever so slightly different timbre. And sometimes timbres change when instruments are combined, like when the melody's played by trumpet and flute, a pairing which makes the trumpet sound softer and brighter than when they're played alone. Tenor saxophone's up next, perfect for the bluesy, syncopated undertones of the melody, an instrument rarely featured in the classical orchestra, but its inclusion reminds us how Ravel loved listening to jazz in the bars of 1920s Paris. The melody passes from tenor to soprano saxophone, another slight change of sonic colour. Preparation for Ravel's craziest experiment in timbre yet, a combination of horn and celeste in C major with piccolos playing over them in completely unrelated keys. Together, they produce the spine-tingling sound of an outer space organ, an ASMR-inducing timbre. How far we've come from that plain and simple flute. This gives way to another trio, oboe, clarinet and cor anglais. Beneath, the violinists, who've not yet even picked up their bows, pluck their strings like Spanish guitars. Looks like Ravel hadn't quite forgotten Madame Rubinstein's Spanish Brief. Wind gives way to brass as the trombone picks up the melody. It whoops with jazzy flair. Eventually, the violinists pick up their bows and play out with full force. For the snare drummer, it's been an exhausting test of skill, nerve and endurance, so a second drum helps out. It's now a battle between the clockwork precision of those drums and the yearning Mediterranean melody of the orchestra. Everyone's now playing as loudly as possible in C major, the key we've been rooted to for 14 minutes. But then the great orchestral machine enters a colossal change of gear, a huge harmonic leap to the unrelated key of E major. Yet before we can settle into this radiant alien territory, we're plunged back into C major. A dazzling transformation which leads to an explosion of pent-up tension. A smashing tam-tam, a raucous trombone. The machine breaks down and grinds to a shuddering halt. Boléro premiered in November 1928 to resounding success, but critics attacked the composer's barefaced chutzpah. Ravel could only agree with them. The orchestral treatment is simple and straightforward throughout, without the slightest attempt at virtuosity. Take it or leave it. There are no contrasts, and practically no invention except for the plan and the manner of execution. It's my one masterpiece with virtually no music in it. And so baffling was Boléro's execution that neurologists think the piece's obsessive repetition was the product of Ravel's dementia. But the truth is, Ravel knew exactly what he was doing. For behind the apparent simplicity of melody, harmony and rhythm was a mechanic, a manipulator of emotions, a master of timbre. Timbre, that one element of music you can't see on a page of notes. It's why Ravel declined to gamble when asked to do so a few years later at Monte Carlo's casino. I wrote Boléro and won. I'll let it go at that. And with his usual clockwork precision, Ravel understood entirely how to hold and control our attention, with a rock-steady tempo that never speeds up. It's why he refused to bow to a standing ovation when Arturo Toscanini conducted the piece at the Paris Opera. The two had a massive backstage argument over the tempo. Toscanini said Ravel knew nothing about his own music, that he had to speed it up in order to save the piece. But the great gamble paid off 40 years after Ravel's death. For the 1979 rom-com 10 saw little Dudley Moore in his white-lapelled white suit seduce glamour girl Bo Derek by playing Boléro on his record player. Sales of the piece rocketed after the movie, making millions for Ravel's estate. Boléro became the most popular record to entice your lover, outperformed only by Marvin Gaye and the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. So perhaps, just perhaps, like the orchestra's imperceptible crescendo over 15 minutes, Boléro has morphed over 9 decades from Ravel's clockwork machine into Rubinstein's seductive dream. Well, that's it, folks. Follow our channel, support us on Patreon, listen to the piece in full, and most importantly, enjoy classical music.